Right then, so we have the second chapter of the book, and this is called as Deserve Before You Desire. And as always, I start with a quote. So here is a quote from Viktor Frankl, one of the most amazing authors and the creator of legal therapy. So Viktor Frankl says that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. And this profound realization comes during his days at the concentration camp during the Second World War. And I would strongly recommend all of you to go and read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Deserve before you desire. So, we have lots of desires that you want to move up the value chain, we want to become somebody, we want to start a business or be a good father, good mother, good spouse, or a good leader, etc. But I think, do we deserve that? Okay, that's a very fundamental question, and that has assumed importance more so in the world of technology. So, the first provocation for all of you is that use machines without becoming one. Now, this man-machine duet would not have even made a mention a couple of years back, but now it has become an existential question. And the best way to answer the question is not to really look into the future, but to really go back into the past and try and understand that machines have always coexisted with us. Only that now they have assumed a very, very significant, almost threatening preposition because they have now started becoming intelligent. And all thanks to us, we are trying to make machine more intelligent. In this chapter, I offer a few conjectures. So my first conjecture is that whenever machines get stronger, we humans get weaker. And the real proof of it is about your physical strength. Now, if I compare you with your father, age for age, suppose you were 30 and your father at 30, who do you think is physically strong? You or your father? I'll most likely say that your father is physically strong at 40 than you at 40. If I take it back to his father at 40 and he at 40, I'm sure his father would have been physically stronger. Now, why is it so happening? That with every single generation, we have become physically weak, which is very interesting. That we are eating more nutritious food, we are eating more wholesome food, a higher calorie intake, we are eating food grown elsewhere in the world, but yet we are physically weak. And the reason we are physically weak is because the immediate environment around us doesn't demand it of. And that's the reason why whatever we don't use, we tend to lose. And machines have taken that piece away from us. So machines have actually made us weak than making us stronger. So the first disturbing conjecture which I have is that whenever machines get stronger, we humans get weaker. And another example perhaps is memory. You know, when we were kids, when I was in my engineering college days, we used to remember phone numbers. I'll at least remember 10 phone numbers, couple of postal codes, addresses, and a few birthdays, and we would not miss wishing people on the birthdays. We can just call up people on their phones, etc. Where has all that memory gone? Today, I'll be glad if I can remember 5 phone numbers. 2, 3 is max. And most people are ailing with that. And the reason we don't remember so many phone numbers is because now we have an excuse. We have this wonderful place called the internet, called the mobile phone, where you can just dump your stuff and forget about that. The thing is not that you don't have to remember. The thing is that you cannot remember. Memory is failing us. Okay? And even the passwords that we have conjured up, complex passwords with alphanumeric passwords and caps and special characters and all of that you have, even memorizing those passwords, we have been eased out thanks to the OTPs. You see? So memory is gone. Labor is gone. Which brings me to the second conjecture, which is technology is a good slave but a bad master. As long as you are using technology, it's fine. But the moment you allow technology to use you, which is increasingly happening today, where people are incessantly hooked onto these reels and all that crappy content online, they are being consumed by technology, not that they are consuming technology. So I would like to be very mindful about what you are doing with your time on the internet. As long as you're using the phone to talk to somebody or to do some recording the way I'm doing it, it's okay. But if you are just using phone because you have nothing else exciting happening to your life, that's absolutely dangerous. So labor is gone. Memory is gone. The next thing which is now taken away from us wholesale is intelligence. Yes, we are no longer as intelligent as we were. If I simply ask you a question, what is 46 into 23? you will find it difficult to answer that question. Now, most children, or even when we were children, if a question like that is posed to us, we will simply jump, take a pen, a paper, and do the calculations. But now we just don't do the calculations. More than excitement and curiosity, these kind of questions make us feel depressed and anxious and look around that, hey, why me? But that needs to be changed, that needs to be questioned. And while we are making technology more intelligent, we are actually becoming less intelligent. We are outsourcing our native intelligence to artificial intelligence, which is a third conjecture. Every new technology pushes us up the value chain. So when labor was gone, memory. When memory is gone, intelligence. What's next? The two things which I would like us to think about is, which machines cannot really take away from us so far, is empathy and creativity. You need to be empathetic towards people around you to understand their stated and the unstated needs, which is to understand the real issues. And you need to be creative to address those issues in a very ingenious, never before manner. And I think both empathy and creativity is something that machines haven't really gotten around with, and that's our sort of a grace. But before that, we need to be very attentive about our attention. So pay attention to your attention, because what is happening is that we are losing out our ability to concentrate on stuff for a very long amount of time. The reason why people before us, generations of people before us, could create stuff which is artistic or scientific or architectural is because they had very long attention spans. What is happening to our generation is that our attention span is shrinking thanks to social media and other interruptions which are there in the lives. And we need to really cut that down. It's extremely critical to cut those interruptions down, because minus attention, you can't really produce anything. So when I was writing this book, I had to really ensure that I discipline myself, that there are long bouts of period where I'm just doing nothing but writing this book, and that is where I could bring a closure to this thing. So pay attention to your attention, and I talk about some of the practices of how do you pay attention, which the book talks about. Then I say that we need to practice compassion and empathy. And it's very critical to be compassionate in life, because what's the point otherwise? If I can't really understand somebody's problem, even to an extent that the other person does not understand her problem so clearly, I cannot solve the problem, right? And I need to ensure that I'm solving the problem with the person, with the help of the person, and that requires empathy. And empathy requires you to listen with intent, observe with purpose, and defer your judgment. And I talk about some of the practices on how do you develop. But at the same time, one need to be also careful of a concept called bounded empathy, which means too much of an empathy can be hazardous, both for you and for the other people involved. So you need to be very careful about what is the boundary condition of empathy. And I advocate that empathy is always bounded by what I can do and what I must do. So if a father or a mother is too empathetic towards their children, then I think the child is just going to be spoiled. So there are a lot of things that I can do, but there are certain things that I can do, but I should not do. And I talk about this very wonderful example of the airline staff at some of the companies like Indigo, where they are empathetic towards you, but not at the cost of business, not at the cost of safety, and not at the cost of convenience of customers and the priorities of their own enterprise. And I think too much of an empathy can be hazardous. It can have a negative effect, which if unchecked. So I think it's very critical to bound your empathy. Another one is on creativity. I advocate that create, don't manage. Actualize, don't intellectualize. This can be a slightly disturbing thought, but you will only be remembered for what you create and not what you manage. If you really peep into the history of mankind, the most monumental creations are remembered, and not so much about tinkering and managing those things. However, in most societies, especially it is true with our Indian culture, is that the moment somebody graduates as an engineer, everybody is setting their eyes at this man should really now move up to become a manager, and then a bigger manager, and henceforth and so on. But the person has long lost the touch with reality, long lost the touch with actually problem solving. So focus on creation. And as an entrepreneur, you're the real agent of creation. So pay attention to attention, be empathetic and compassionate, but with bounded empathy, and eventually be creative. And how do you remain creative? You need to be very, very curious. You have to live with a lot of curiosity, but keep pivoting. That's very critical. You have to keep pivoting about curiosity, because if you end up becoming curious about something, you chase it, and you realize that it is not really helping you produce something, feel no obligation to sustain with it. Just pivot. It's absolutely okay that you do experiments in life, but if you're doing experiments in life, it is equally critical that you just forgive yourself if some of the experiments don't go well. I'll talk about chess grandmaster Vishwanathan Anand's experimentation with chess, how he reinvented himself. I talk about Adam Grant's book Think Again, where he talks about how he changed his preposition about human learning between now and his previous book. Satya Nadella, how he admitted that he has made a mistake when he called out how karma can take care of pay disparity in women. So how do you develop curiosity? The first is take half chances. Life is full of half chances. Don't wait for chances to come to your doorway all decorated. Take half chances. Let learning take precedence over earning. Okay, which means where you learn from need not be where you earn from. So if you're earning money from your organization which is not helping you learn new skills, pick up a side gig where you can learn new stuff. Move on if it doesn't work without regret. I think between forgiving others and forgiving yourself, the more difficult thing is to forgive yourself. So you need to develop the propensity to just go about, do stuff and say sorry, it's okay. And retain a fluid identity, which is, as I said before also, it's not who you are, it's about who all you are. What are the various dimensions that you can pick up in your life? Because when you retain a fluid identity, it's very important that you are not setting yourself for one particular failure. And in this, I talk about Paul Kalanithi, who was major in both English and English literature and medicine. I talk about Feynman, who was an absolute polymath, and a lot of other people along the way who have retained a very fluid identity, and that allowed them to survive well after their retirement years. Protect your hobbies from your profession. Only in the last 3 years, I picked up guitar, I picked up chess in a very big way, and I'm enjoying it. I use guitar for my right brain and chess for my left brain, and I try to very ferociously protect my hobbies from my profession. Otherwise, the profession just takes over. So Phil Knight is a great example that he continued working elsewhere while his pet company Nike was taking up shape. He was an avid runner, and that showed up in the ferocity with which he created. MS Dhoni continues to serve the armed forces while he's playing cricket. And a lot of other examples. Nicholas Nassim Taleb continued to be a Wall Street trader years into being a full-time author. And Elizabeth Gilbert had a day job while she was being a very, very good author at it. So I think it's very critical to have a hobby and not pressurize your hobby to pay your bills, and that's how you can really develop creativity. And finally, for creativity to take any shape in your life, you need to have discipline. And the best example that I can offer to you about discipline is my favorite director, Christopher Nolan. One of the attributes of Christopher Nolan is that he sticks to the script come what may. If the script has to be delivered in a certain way, he is a purist. He typically doesn't use any graphics. He doesn't use much of imagery. He renders pure experience. He doesn't even look at the screen as much as he looks right into the camera. He doesn't use lenses. He zooms right onto your face. The camera is right there on your face to sort of look at those close-ups. And that's why his movies are amazing. He doesn't give up. He's very disciplined. Okay. So that was your chapter number 2. It's a little long chapter, but I think it was critical for me to call out the importance of reducing technology's dependence in your life, bringing true empathy in your life, practicing creativity, and being disciplined about it. So that's your chapter 2. We'll now be getting into chapter 3. Thank you.